Welcome back to the Manage Her Health Month here on the Manage Her podcast, a special series exploring what happens when women stop surviving and start reclaiming their energy, metabolism, hormones, nervous systems, and long-term health. Today's guest is someone whose work beautifully bridges modern metabolic science with a deeply human and holistic approach to wellness. I'm joined by Rebecca Maas, clinician, speaker, educator, and founder of Maas Method. Rebecca specializes in narrative medicine, a whole person approach to health that focuses not just on symptoms, but on listening deeply to someone's story, lifestyle, emotional patterns, environment, and relationship with their body. She works with clients internationally through telehealth and has become known for her work in metabolic health, functional medicine, food psychology, longevity, pantry transformation, and helping people reconnect with their bodies in a culture that often teaches us to disconnect from them. Rebecca also recently completed her upcoming book, The Holistic Guide to Thriving on GLP-1s, a comprehensive protocol to optimize weight loss, ensure metabolic health, and achieve lasting results. And what I appreciate so much about her perspective is that she's not approaching this conversation from a trendy wellness angle. These principles have actually been a part of her life since childhood, growing up with a deeply holistic mother who shaped the way she viewed food, health, nature, and the body from a very early age. In today's conversation, we talk about metabolic health, GLP-1 medications, food and mood, pantry makeovers, nervous system health, women's relationship with food, and why true wellness is less about punishment and more about partnership with the body. We also explore how our modern food system disconnected people from nourishment, why mothers are often the CEOs of household health, and how women can begin reclaiming agency over their bodies and energy in a sustainable way. This episode is grounded, practical, intelligent, and honestly deeply refreshing. So please welcome Rebecca Maas to the Manage Her podcast. Hey, Rebecca, we are
Aimee.
going, baby. We're on.
We are on. Thank you for having me today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, man, same here. Thanks for being here. Rebecca, for people meeting you for the first time, how do you describe the work you do today?
Yeah, my work is really the intersection of systems biology, which I'll explain what that means, looking at our body as a system, not just a machine with isolated parts. And it's an intersection between that and functional nutrition, meaning looking at food as performing a function, not just an energy or calorie source. Also with self-reclamation, really using our bodies as a portal for healing the rest of ourselves. Because one might say, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if we were to borrow that philosophy, that couldn't apply better than to our relationship with ourselves. And nourishment and self-care, not self-care in a woo-woo way like cucumbers on the eyes and bubble baths, although I'm all about that too. I mean like real, true, deep self-care, because no one can ever love you more than you can love yourself. We could be surrounded with the most loving family members, but nobody can ever love us enough than the way we care for ourselves. So I really teach my clients and patients to start with that foundational mindset shift and to incorporate the principles of old and new. So old sort of ancient traditions about the body being a system and something to be honored and to work with, not against. And then modern biology, which is really understanding how everything affects everything and that we actually have levers we can pull on. We have labs, we have all kinds of data we can use to kind of unlock our access to our own bodies.
Oh, I can totally see that. And you were actually raised this way, kind of like me. Your mom was super holistic, like my mom. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your holistic mama.
Well, I was a weirdo kid. I was teased, heavily teased, actually, sometimes lovingly, sometimes not, because the food in my house was weird and there was nothing to eat. That's because what we had in our kitchen was real food. It wasn't what I call barcode food. It wasn't recognizable brands. At the center of the aisle, my mom really had this understanding that, food truly is medicine. So I was raised in a home. I mean, I'm not saying this is the thing to do, but I will tell you what was done, which is I didn't even have We also didn't have much money, but I didn't have a pediatrician. I didn't have a dentist. I mean, we didn't even have health insurance. We never even even if we had health insurance, I'm not sure we would use those doctors. Thank God there was no emergencies. But my mother used food and herbs and nutrition and natural medicine to heal me. I did once I had kind of like a gum infection or something that was bothering me, and I was just normal. My mom took me to this pharmacy called Capital Pharmacy in Santa Monica, where the pharmacist would look at you and give you herbs, and I was given frankincense and myrrh, like in the Bible, and I was put that on my gums, and I was better in 2 days. Otherwise, I would have been given antibiotics. So this has to be done with real wisdom and intelligence, but I just came from the framework that if we take care of our body will take care of us. And it's super fun now for my framework to be relevant and sort of cool. I often joke, my life is Revenge of the Nerds. If you remember that movie, it definitely dates me as it should because I'm 54. Happy to say I'm 54. And
You look great.
Thank you. Revenge of the Nerds is like, that's my life. I used to be a nerd. And my revenge is really a vengeance is really bringing all this to a place where people really want this in the market. So it's a really fun, exciting time to be doing this work. It's well received at last.
That's awesome. What are some of the lessons from your childhood that still carry into your practice today?
The lesson that carries with me is to trust that our symptoms are signals. The symptoms our body gives are not a nuisance. It's not something to be dismissed or irritated by or just tampered with medications. I'm glad we have medications. I travel a lot and I have a pouch of pharmaceuticals because if I'm in another country, I want to make sure I have something that's really going to be efficacious and at my fingertips. However, that doesn't create health. I really learned that if we pause and make friends with our body will speak to us. And those symptoms are an invitation to treat ourselves differently. Our body's always asking for something.
Oh, totally. I
Yeah.
absolutely believe that all the way. And the more we're learning about science and the way the body works with signaling and all these new
Yes.
peptides and everything coming in, how those signal our bodies to do things, you couldn't
Yeah.
be more on point with that. Absolutely. You
Yeah.
use the phrase narrative medicine. What does that mean to you?
Narrative medicine is this idea that if we really listen to what the patient or client has to say and regard their story not as just background information or extra information, but regard it as clinically useful, that if we take that time to really offer someone presence, that they will tell their own story. Like our body has its own biography, or if you will, our biology has its own biography. And if we allow the person to go back, share their story. Oh, when I was 5 years old, I was in Mexico and I got this terrible stomach virus. I was visiting my grandmother. And then I started developing, when you think about it, I started developing rashes. And if you really start listening to, I used to develop photos in college. I thought I was going to be a photographer. I spent a lot of time in a dark room. That's toxic exposure. So there's actual data points that get revealed. But then there's also a story. Sometimes trauma is also in there. Sometimes we also reveal our biases and beliefs about ourselves. Maybe being sick got us a lot of attention. Maybe being sick, we got to opt out of doing things. And so a lot of excuses were made for us. So we latched onto that and that doesn't serve us anymore. So narrative medicine to me is really handing the microphone back to the client and the patient and letting them share without interruption. And that takes time. That's not fast, sexy. That's not a billable to insurance 15-minute visit. It's a cliche, but it's a really good cliche. It's peeling the onion and allowing what needs to be revealed, giving it the time, the attention to be revealed.
Totally.
Revealed
And
to be healed.
I love that. Why do you think people are craving a more connected and personalized approach to healthcare right now?
Yeah, I think that we've seen that this model does not work. We've tried it now for decades. And really, what the modern medicine model has offered us is disease care, does not offer us health. It was never designed to. Physicians spend so much time in medical school. They sacrifice so much of their early adult lives to get this incredible training, and they are some of our brightest minds. but they just weren't given the inputs or the training on how to create health and longevity in the body. It's sick care. So I think understandably, we are seeing all the cracks in this at last. More and more people are. And the data doesn't lie to us because as a country in the United States, we spend the most per capita, and our debt reveals that on how much, I think we're in the trillions, on healthcare. And we are the sickest or one of the sickest globally. So our model just categorically does not work.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, we've never spent more money on healthcare,
Yeah.
and we've never been less healthy as a
True.
nation.
That's true.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. I know
Yeah.
it's the food problems are,
Food
a
problems.
major problem for America right now. But
Yeah.
first, let's get into metabolic health and
Mhm.
GLP-1s.
Okay.
You recently finished your upcoming book, The Holistic Guide to Thriving on GLP-1s. First of all, what inspired you to write it? There's obviously a
Yeah.
huge cultural conversation happening around GLP-1
Uh-huh.
medications right now. So what concerns you most about how people are approaching them?
It's huge, isn't it? And it's bigger
Yeah.
now than when I started writing the book. And the way this book came about, because I have to say, I surprised myself. I didn't think as a holistic practitioner, my very first authorship would be on a medication.
Right?
But I perceived a really big gap in the care. So what was happening is that I am not a prescriber, I'm not a physician. I work in the holistic model. But I do work in concert with a number of physicians. So physicians will bring patients or clients to me. And I will also see those who are working with their own physicians. So I'm not the prescriber. What happens is these individuals come to me already on the medication or about to be prescribed it or choose to be prescribed it. And this was back a few years ago when this was new to everybody. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. So I myself, I always care about learning and expanding what I know. Also, my greatest priority is to my client, full stop. So it's not my place to have a dogmatic position on a prescription medication. I might have private opinions, and when asked, I'm happy to share them, but that's not my plan of care. My plan of care is how to support the individual in front of me to their goals. And I started finding all these very difficult symptoms and these stories around these medications. So I'm like, how do I support somebody using functional medicine and the principles of systems biology to support their body? And I started realizing, first of all, there's this gap in care that most are just given the prescription, sent on their way, wishing them well with weight loss, but no program or support, either in the Western model or anything else. And I also started realizing as I uncovered all this, that a lot of the time these medications were getting blamed for the side effects. And fair enough, some of these side effects are actually features of the medication, not just side effects. For instance, slowing of gastric emptying. But I did find that it might be more useful to blame not the medication itself, but the lack of protocol. Because when we see the body as a whole system, we understand there's a language happening. So if we were to adopt the perspective, the body doesn't make mistakes, the body knows what it's doing, then why is the body manifesting these symptoms? What's it trying to resolve? And I found things like a lot of gallbladder congestion and stressed liver, and the dosing was very high. So the weight loss was too rapid. I don't get to decide the dosing, but I can help our clients by developing this protocol that I developed in real time. And now I've, democratized it and put it into a book that will be out in a few months for anybody to pick up if they wish to use these medications in a way to make their bodies stronger and metabolically well. So we can use these medications to be smaller and thinner. That's obvious. But oftentimes that leads people to becoming weaker, metabolically weaker, more ill, more fragile, damaging their metabolism, toxic, on and on and on. Same medication, but the approach, i.e., the protocol, varies. This is my offering of what I literally had to create in real time with my patient population.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when I look at GLP-1s, it kind of reminds me of when birth control pills first came on the market. When
Oh,
birth
how
control
so?
pills first came on the market, the dose was so high. It was 1,000 times too high.
Oh.
And women were having major
Oh,
strokes, lots of strokes in young
that's
women.
right.
And it's my mom being a pharmacist, this is one of the things I grew up
Yes.
talking about, you know, the
Yes.
homeopathic dose, the appropriate dose versus a lot of times the clinical dose that comes to market first. You look at the clinical dose for aspirin when they first brought it to market, may have been one of the major causes of the Spanish flu,
Right.
because those guys,
Right.
those soldiers in Europe were coughing up
Mm.
blood and all of the symptoms
Mm.
that you would have with an aspirin overdose.
Right. Makes your
Um,
stomach bleed. Yeah.
yeah, if you don't realize proper dosing, if you're
Mm.
giving someone too high of a dose, that's when you're going to see major, like a majority of your symptoms, which I do see, you know, with the GLP-1s, they kind of came out the gate with the semaglutide,
Yes.
you know, and it was like, seemed like the dose may have been way too high when it first came
Mm.
out, you know, and they were taking people way too fast.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You hit it on the head. And this is a bit of an experiment. You know, these
Yeah.
people right now are in a bit of a beta, like a test right
We're always
now.
in a beta with, you know, anytime a drug comes to
Yes.
market, you're in a
Yes.
stage 4 clinical trial.
Yes.
So
And just to be clear, to put a little nuance on this, technically these drugs have been around for decades, but never in this application. We haven't used them as weight loss drugs. They were used for diabetes
Mhm.
and metabolic illness, but they were never prescribed at this volume for this application. So when I say new drug, I don't literally mean it's new. I mean it's new in this expanse prescription writing and that it's now being found through other platforms.
Yeah.
So and I sensed at the time, because I kind of hesitated, like, am I going to write this book and then this thing will sort of self-correct and go away? And I thought to myself, no, my sense is this is only going to grow in terms of population. I think now we're at over 10% of the population is on them or has been on them. That's enormous.
Wow, that's
That is
huge,
enormous.
Rebecca. Oh,
So we have a real
10%.
obligation to know what we're doing. And again, it's not for me to take a moral position on a medication. Do you remember a few years ago, people were taking a moral position on a
I
certain
do.
biologic? And it just kind of makes you things that make you go, remember that
Y
song? It's like,
yes.
why is there an ethical or moral value assigned to taking or not taking a drug? I get really curious when we get these outsized emotional responses to
Totally.
something that comes in from a pharmacy. And I could talk about that all day. We can talk about pharmaceutical medicine. It's deeply flawed and has not served us in the way that it could. It has potential that
Mhm.
has been actually say abused, I'm sorry to say, not by everybody, but by the regulatory capture, etc. However, we still have to be boots on the ground and care about all the folks that are on it. And it feels like the wild, wild west. So I want these people to not have to answer to an immoral issue as it is not one. I want them to be able to receive support through the training that I and many have received, which is looking at the body as a system.
Absolutely, because this is a tool. The
Yeah.
GLP-1s are a tool, and you
Yeah.
really can it really can help your metabolic health if you use it correctly, or it can hurt your metabolic health.
That's
It's
right.
like everything, you know,
That's right.
honestly. You look at just about anything in our world, and if you use it the right way, it can help you, and if you use it the wrong way, it's gonna hurt you. So it's all about having a protocol.
That's
So
exactly
important.
right. And you see a lot in the literature, people writing about it, where they say it's going to be used forever and we're going to give it to children and it has mass application. And these people are trumpeting it like a miracle drug, which is a it's a very strong reaction. It's not necessarily clinical reaction, I would say.
Yeah.
60 Minutes did a piece on them about a year ago, and the whole piece was very pro GLP. And guess what? It was endorsed by a pharmaceutical company. I would like to see more pieces on this medication without the endorsements. But then on the other side, we have those who say this is a moral failing. People are waving the white flag. They're being lazy. Why don't they just diet and exercise? You know, it's really not anyone's business. That is also a personal decision. The government and media doesn't belong in our personal business for what we put in our body. So I get really curious when I hear this, like this split a lot of dogma. I'm like, the truth is somewhere in there. And I would like to, maybe I won't discover it completely, but I'd like to start peeling that back a bit. And so I did that in the book as well.
Well, when you look at what we're up against in the modern world, things that really weren't as prolific in our diets 20 years ago, the
Yeah.
obesogens, the plastics, the
Yes.
BPAs, the PFOAs, there are a lot of chemicals in our modern diet that really weren't even there 25 years ago that are making people fat, and they don't even know that they're making them fat. So it is nice that we do have this newer tool that can help people, especially people who've been metabolically damaged from the overuse of these chemicals in our food supply.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
I've seen it firsthand, and it's amazing what it can do for people who've really struggled because they don't know how to eat. They don't realize that what they're eating is poisoning them. It's exposing them to these kinds of chemicals that are actually causing them to be obese. And most people, they
so
just
this
don't have an
population-
awareness.
Yeah, this population needs and deserves our support.
Mm-hmm.
We know we're being lied to when we're told obesity is genetic. Everything has genetic roots to it. You do see that run in families. But if anything changes this quickly from generation to generation, our genes don't mutate that quickly. There is such thing as epigenetics, which does change gene expression.
And
But
if you want to make
Yes, go ahead.
a fat mouse, all you have to do is expose its mother, a pregnant mother
That's
mouse,
right.
to BPA, and you can turn on the agouti gene, which causes the mice to
Exactly.
be white, fat, and prone to cancer.
That's exactly right. And then does that mean that obesity is genetic? Or
No,
does
it's
that mean there was
epigenetic.
something right? Or does that
It's
mean there was something
environmental.
in the environment, or the word that's now used is the exosome, like
Mhm.
the environment around us that exists outside our body that changes the biology inside our body. If it changes genes, it doesn't make it genetic. Cancer can also be defined by something in our environment that changes our genes. That doesn't mean it's genetic, doesn't mean it's passed down. So we're lied to a bit there, and that's a sale we use to be able to actually, I think, sell more drugs. But I'm all about truth. Like, I'm committed to how close can we get to the truth? I have a great deal of compassion for those who struggle with weight loss resistance because it's almost like they're wearing their problems on the outside of their body, or a lot of us can conceal our problems, and so there's a vulnerability there. And this population deserves a lot of candor and honesty because they have been lied to about the source of some of this. And obesity, one of the characteristics of obesity is being starving all the time. There's a leptin disruption, which is a hormone that tells our body whether we're full or hungry. And how does leptin get so dysregulated without going, that's a whole other podcast, but by kind of eating the wrong foods that really jack with our insulin, that's one way. And then by starting to store fat, the fat itself then becomes leptin resistant. So there's this concept called the fat switch. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I have
But
not.
There's things that we do to our bodies, and then our body's wise. It wants to protect us. So its response is to start increasing fat. Also, we store toxins in our fat. Because again, my assertion is our body's a genius and our body is ancient. Our bodies and our brains are ancient, and our bodies always have a bias towards survival. So our body doesn't care how much we weigh. Body cares whether we're surviving. And so when we're exposed to all these toxins and pollutants and pesticides, even EMF radiation, magnetic radiation, electric carb, all these things are very stressful to our body. What does our body do in its infinite wisdom? It takes a lot of those pollutants and toxins and it kind of bubble wraps them in fat and shoves them away from our heart and our brain to protect us. So sometimes a body that feels like they have weight loss resistance, the first thing they need to do is send a message to their body that they're safe and start to gently detox so the body feels like the environment's safe enough to start releasing all this. And when we lose weight too quickly, which can happen with really high GLP-1 dosing, we are not designed to lose weight at that rapid of a speed. I understand the appeal. I understand people feel like they have a deadline and they just want to use this to get thin for the wedding, the reunion. I understand, not only am I human, but I'm a woman. And yeah, I care about how I look. That's real. But our body is not matched towards that goal. So what happens when we lose weight too quickly, more than 1.5 pounds a week, I would say, if I were asked, then we flood our liver and our gut with all these liberated toxins. The metaphor that I use is, do you know, I'm older than you, but do you remember those snow globes as a kid? Have you seen
Yeah,
those?
of
When you
course.
shake them up and all the glittery snow gets liberated and dances around. That's the metaphor that I think of when I think of fat loss, because think of all the toxins kind of being neatly stored, tucked away. Then the fat loss liberates the toxins that were bubble wrapped in the fat. And now they're filling the dome and they become recirculated and reabsorbed. This is oftentimes, not always, why many GLP patients experience a lot of fatigue and brain fog and even flu-y symptoms, not because of the drug. And I don't say that because I'm endorsing a drug. It's because of the protocol or the lack of the protocol.
So when people are experiencing something like that, in my experience, I would use something like glutathione to help my
Yes.
liver
Yeah.
detoxify,
Yes.
right? Is that something
Yes.
that you would do?
Glutathione is really, I consider glutathione foundational. For the listeners who haven't heard of that, it's our body's master antioxidant. And we all make it, but many of us are not making enough.
It's me.
Not only are we not making enough, but enough compared to what? Compared to our toxic load. So sometimes I use the metaphor, and other people do, I'm not the first one to use the metaphor of a sink or a bathtub. You have a drain and you have a faucet. So if you think of the drain as our body's detoxification systems, and that's there to help eliminate and clear out. And you think of the faucet as the incoming toxic load. If that basin starts filling up at a faster rate than we can clear it out, that is a high toxic burden. What we want, well, first of all, we don't want toxins, but we all have them. What we want is to clear those detox pathways so that as we have the incoming, so too we have the outflowing or the clearing. And that's a really important thing to dial in. And, I do that clinically over time because some people are actually too sick to even detox. We have to get their body kind of stabilized. I know that sounds funny. A lot of practitioners will say detox is first, and it is with a normally healthy client. But as I have experience with chronic complex illness. And some of those, like Lyme, mast cell, autoimmune, they need a little bit more time to dampen down the inflammation, provide basic nutrition, sleep, and then we move in detoxification. But it is always, always used clinically because it's what our body was designed to do. It's not like a woo-woo word. And I don't mean detox in like a TikTok way. I don't even have TikTok, so I don't even know what they say on TikTok. But there is a medical term for it. The medical term for detox is biotransformation. So it's a thing.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, our body, our liver and kidneys were designed, and our intestines were designed to detoxify our bodies. Like,
Right.
they're literally the filters of our bodies. And so with the GLP-1s, the cool thing about them is they aren't like drugs. They are like these peptides. So they don't
Right.
actually clear through, they don't clear your kidney or your liver, which is so fascinating about them because most pharmaceutical drugs will clear either through the kidneys or the liver, but
That's very smart of you. That's very
these
smart of you.
don't.
Yes, these are peptides. Now, when they come in
Yeah.
prescription form, they are a synthetic form of the peptide, but they are a peptide. And so, what does that mean for your listeners? It means that our body has receptors for these. So, our cells have receptors, which are like these little windows and doors that open and receive information. So, we have these all over our body, and we don't just have them on our gut, we have them on our brain and our pancreas, have them all through our body, which means what? Which means our body makes them and our body was designed to use them and need them. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? This is not something, auxiliary that we're throwing into the mix. This is something that our body does make. And that kind of leads me to one of the things that I cover in the book which makes sense, is to try to approximate something called a physiologic dosing, which just means the amount that your body, an otherwise healthy functioning body, would make on its own, right? So we don't know that exactly in terms of milliliters, but we want to be really careful. That's why low and slow is the tempo, going really gradual with the dosing. And I also assert, I find my clients do much better when they're on them for longer, yet the on ramp is really gradual versus shoving them onto the freeway, then slamming on the brakes and throwing them off the nearest exit. That's like a high dose for a short time. My model, again, I'm not a prescriber, just an observation, is that it's better when we go low and slow and use them longer, because the longer also leads to what I share in the book, which is the opportunity, the window of opportunity these drugs offer us is, here's a big word, neuroplasticity, that our brain changes based on what we do. So if we use the window, the GLP window, to really dial in our relationship with our body, how we eat, our macros, our cravings, even our sleep-wake cycle, our hydration, not just eating less garbage and losing weight, but actually shifting the whole model of how we treat our body, then when we do come off, should we decide to, we don't just have a different body, we have a different brain, because we have created new pathways, new cravings, new habits. And that gives us longevity well beyond the prescription cycle.
That's so interesting, Rebecca. So what do you think the optimal cycle is for something like this? I feel like people are moving more away from the semaglutide because it's a little bit more heavy in symptoms, and moving more towards the tirzepatide, the Wegovy,
Yes.
or the Mounjaro GLP-1.
I see that's happening. There's a lot of trends in prescribing. There's a new one that's not FDA approved, but there's a lot of chatter about retatrutide because that has 3 different peptides, not just the GLP-1. I think that this is like a moving train, like it's moving fast, and there's going to be a lot of different options coming up. But what I see is one of the problems here is when the drugs are used with a insurance model, then what will happen is someone will be prescribed the starting dose, and then after X amount of time, they use time as the variable. Okay, insurance has approved you now to go to the next dose. Well, guess what? Oftentimes, the next dose is double the starting. So 25 units, is usually the starting dose. Then they get pushed into 50 just
Whoa.
because of time. But if their body's not ready for that, and if they don't even need it, sometimes, I have clients like, I don't even need a second injection. I don't want to inject every week. I don't need it still stays in my body. And I kind of like it when it wears off a little bit, because then I get back and get a sense of what my body's needing and doing. And when we're just like, well, every 7 days, well, it's been 4 months and now you're at this dose, I think we're going to be running into problems there. So this is something really nuanced that pharmaceutical companies, prescribers, doctors are all going to have to figure out, because, usually if we're given, let's say, some kind of a drug, we can, whether we're told to or not, decide, well, maybe I'll just cut it in half today because maybe I don't need it as much. I'm not endorsing that because I can't tell people what to do. But
even your
those,
pharmacist will tell you to do that occasionally.
yes,
Like, yeah,
exactly.
it's fine.
Yes,
My mom's a pharmacist. We'd often say, oh,
exactly.
yeah, if you feel like you only need half of
Right.
this dose, it's okay to do that.
Sure,
Yeah.
exactly. Particularly when people are taking, psychoactive medications or like a sleeping pill or benzos. Those are really strong medications, and they have agency to decide I don't need as much, right? But with these pre-dosed pens, my clients aren't able to do that. They lose some agency in that dosing, right? So all of this is going to have to be really ironed out, and that's why it's ever more important that we have a whole body approach to using these medications. I don't know of one out there. It doesn't mean there isn't one. And, I'm getting anxious because like every day I'm like, I got to get the book out because, there's more and more demand for it. But I'm trying to be patient myself and just put the final touches, and it'll be out in a few months. But I think this approach is really, really useful, not because I came up with it, but because if you have a training like mine, kind of becomes obvious, like we're missing something here. There's a gap.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more, especially when you talk about the dosing pens. I've actually been working with Beauty Drip with Tara Turner and with her partner, Dr. Emily Pasick, but they use a
Mm.
compounding pharmacy for their
Yes.
terzepatide, which they
Love
actually
that.
compound B12 with it and
I
glycine.
love that
Isn't that the
because
best formula
B12.
ever?
Yes,
Yes.
I love that. I know a lot of more integrative minded physicians that
Hmm.
are compounding it with B12, and that will make the injection look red, by the way. That's that red color. But B12 does what? B12 helps your body convert food into energy, right? So, doesn't that make sense when we're trying to lose weight that the food actually gives us energy as opposed to just being stored? Because stored energy is fat. Liberated energy is fat loss. So, right, that's using that like systems thinking. Like, what do we do? Biohackers use the term stack, like
Yeah.
creating a stack of supplements or protocols. And that's a stack right there. It's brilliant. It makes a lot of sense.
It
And
really
a lot of
does,
these
and the
medications,
glycine too. I didn't even know what
yeah,
glycine was until I
yeah,
started talking to
amino
these
acid.
this so I was taught, yeah, it's an amino acid, but my gosh, if you're experiencing, like, hair loss that can happen with the
Mhm.
GLP-1s,
Yeah,
glycine can actually be the answer for that because it's actually a precursor to
yeah.
collagen. I had
It,
no idea. So
it
cool.
is, and it's missing in
Yeah.
a lot of our frankenfoods.
Yes, and
And it
the
helps a lot
glyphosate.
with deep sleep.
Yeah, it helps with
Yeah,
these deep sleep. It's so good for deep sleep, but actually the glyphosate that's in our food attacks that
yeah.
glycine
You're
in our
absolutely
food.
right. That's so
Yeah.
smart, Amy. You're absolutely right. You know a lot about this.
Well,
Again,
I've
that's
been
like a
having too much.
systems thinking, right? It's like, okay, does the medication cause hair loss? Maybe, yeah, it does.
Sometimes.
Or another way of looking at it is what are the necessary conditions that get created with the presence of a GLP for hair loss? We're going to learn a lot in the next 5 or 10 years, but when you use that question, you get a different answer. Then we get answers like you just posited about, glycine and collagen. And of course, we need vitamin C to process all that. And so maybe it's really just a micronutrient and macronutrient deficiency. So what does that sound like? Borderline starvation, right?
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
you see it. I mean, there were the anorexic girls in high school, they lose their hair and that sort of thing. So I mean, you've
When they
seen people
stop
who've starved
menstruating,
before.
right?
Yeah. And so you
Uh,
can see those very similar conditions in people that are
mhm,
using these drugs in a prescribed way by a prescriber who, if they're using their insurance
mhm.
company and they have to use it the way that they've been prescribed and they don't have any leeway, you really can see those kinds of not so great results for people.
That's exactly right. And if we ask the right questions, maybe there's another option available to those who are using the drugs. Maybe they can suffer less. Like we're all going
Definitely.
to suffer. Life is really hard. We all suffer. But one of my goals is working with people is let's reduce the unnecessary suffering.
Yes, absolutely. In a lot of ways, it's knowledge. Knowledge is
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
If you know, then you can do better. And that's one of the best things about being a woman, I think, is that when one woman learns something, she totally shares it with 10 of her friends.
We do. We do. We pass it on. And they
Yeah.
say that, your health is really the subtotal of the people that you spend your time with. So women tend to create our own, little like subcultures of health and information and share that in community, because we all need community. So if we don't have it, we're going to create it.
Absolutely. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for, ladies out there, if you're looking for a more customized way to get peptides, go to beautydrip.co. Those girls, they're a
Right.
part of my June Manage Your Health month.
Oh,
And I just, that way you can actually get the compounding pharmacy and take what you want to take for
right.
that week. You
Right.
don't have to double up your dose if you don't want to. You
Yeah.
can stay
Yeah.
low and slow.
So, what might be the ideal dose for one person may wreck the next person. And so that's why we need, someone that's going to work closely with these individuals, really listen. Remember, we talked at the beginning of the hour about really listening and offering our clients and patients that presence and that their story is clinically relevant. That comes into play here so that they can have the best clinical outcomes for their body and have a stronger body at the end of this, not just a smaller body, a stronger body. A smaller body can be weaker
Mhm.
And you can start developing things like sarcopenia and muscle wasting. So again, weight loss itself is also a tricky term. We don't really, really want weight loss, do we? We want fat loss. We use it as a catch-all term and we all know what each other means, but we don't really want weight loss. In fact, muscle weighs more than fat. We actually want to put on mass and lose the fat. So how we use this medication will also shape very much that outcome.
Yeah, and for that, it's really cool. What they do for that is the sermorelin, which I think is a very interesting
Mhm.
peptide. It makes your body produce growth
HGH.
hormone, HGH, while
Mhm.
you're sleeping.
Mhm.
So you take it 5 nights a week, because one of the things that you really do get is the muscle wasting with the
Yes.
GLP-1s. You're
Yeah.
losing weight, but oftentimes you're losing equal parts fat and muscle.
Yes. Yes. And part of that is somewhat unavoidable because when you
Mhm.
do lose a lot of weight, you will lose some muscle. And part of that, again, beating the same drum, is a lack of protocol on how to eat, how to move, how to exercise, how to detox.
Yeah.
So, and the more sort of fat we have marbleized into our muscle, kind of like a piece of meat, that toxic fat, inflammatory fat gets marbleized into our own muscle. So the muscle might even, shrink for a period, but just for a period, if we really dial in the protocol, then we're actually optimizing our muscle because muscle is a metabolic organ. It is not a passive structure in our body. It's actually an endocrine organ. And muscle cells act like little Pac-Men. They go and they gobble up excess free floating sugar. So when we optimize our muscle, that in itself is healing to our metabolic health because free floating sugar is very toxic. Sugar is very jagged. When you see a creme brulee being made, they put the sugar on top and they blow torch it, and that sugar melts. And then you take your spoon and you crack it, and you have these jagged shards, right? It's very dramatic when you
Yeah,
think
it's
about
like
this dessert.
glass. It's like glass. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what sugar does in our bloodstream. When it free floats, it turns into something called, it's a great acronym because it's what it is, AGE, Advanced Glycation End Product. AGEs, they age you. And what are they? They are like shards of glass and they tear up the insides of our blood vessels. So what's one way to hedge against that? Of course, decrease your glucose consumption and your carbohydrate consumption and optimize your muscle mass so that your muscle can be like little Pac-Man and run around and gobble all these guys up before they do their Freddy Krueger damage.
Gnarly.
Gnarly
That's
is
so
right. Our
crazy,
body's
Rebecca.
amazing.
That is amazing. I've actually,
Yeah.
of all of the discussions I've had about biology, I haven't had that one yet, and I love that. That's awesome. What a cool way to look at it. I had a
Mm.
metabolic disorder at 26. I was
Oh,
diagnosed with metabolic syndrome
yeah,
and
you shared that on your pod
polycystic,
before,
polycystic
PCOS. And
ovarian
you were told
and
that you're gonna be challenged to be
Hashimoto's.
reproductive, and could
Yeah.
that be more wrong with all your beautiful children?
But, it's really knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
And it was really I was so lucky that my endocrinologist sent me to a clinical nutritionist. And what we
You
can
were lucky.
do with nutrition, if we use it in combination with these other things, if we really bring in an expert in nutrition to help us design nutrition plan. Like if I had you helping me design a nutrition plan while I'm working with Dr. Emily Pasek, that kind of
Mm,
thing where you get
mm.
synergy. And then you're also gaining the knowledge, not just from one woman or two women or three. Now I've got three
Right.
women on my team helping to bring
Yes.
their knowledge to me to create a better protocol, better system. And I love creating systems. I'm a systems builder. So-
Yes, you are. You most definitely are. And I'm so glad, Amy, you were given that support and you were given it so young before these other ideas cemented in your mind that it wasn't possible and before the PCOS advanced.
Mhm.
So I'm really grateful to whoever it was that offered you that perspective. And then what did they do? They gave you agency over your own body. You possess the levers. You just need someone to help you along the way. Doctor, docere means to teach in Latin. And so
Wow.
those clinicians around you are there to teach you how to care for you. Because we just don't know innately. we used to know, we've forgotten along the way. So
Yeah,
that was what
absolutely.
that's what you were provided. What a beautiful
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, and it was really I remember at one point she said, "You can't just want this. You have to be willing." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, what's the difference between wanting and willing? Like, I don't
No.
get it." And she's like, "Willing implies work." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So I'm going to have to put in some work." Work meant not just what I was eating, but creating that awareness about what is a yes, what's a no, what's a maybe or a sometime, but also really learning. I looked at my body and went, okay, I have to learn how to eat like a human. Like I need to be my own zookeeper here.
I love that
Like
metaphor
I've
you use. It's so good. It's so good because it's so graphic, and I think everyone knows what you mean. Yeah, go ahead, tell everybody your
Yeah,
zookeeper
because
metaphor. I love it.
the chimpanzees at the zoo
Yeah.
are it's interesting, they're one of our closest relatives, and at the zoo, the zookeeper really has to watch their sugar intake because primates love sugar.
Yeah.
And humans, we're me too.
We're all in that category, right?
Yeah, we do because our bodies are like, oh wow, these are great. If we were in the wild and we came across sugar, our body would be like, oh my gosh, what a great way for me to gain the calories to
Right.
help keep me in the survival mode. You found
And to
a
store fat
hive.
for famine.
Yes,
That's what it
exactly. You
does.
found
It
a
stores
honey
fat for
hive. You're gonna
famine.
eat that honey up, and your body's
Right.
gonna store that as fat because when you're in the wild. But we living not in the wild, living in captivity, we have to figure out how
Mhm.
do we fuel ourselves, in a way that can keep us healthy, create longevity, reduce inflammation, make us less prone to all kinds of illnesses. So it's really our job to manage our bodies and our families because we have to learn so that we can help everyone around us, mom, dad,
Yes.
hubby,
Yes.
the kids, and so we as women have a big job to do to figure out how we navigate this modern world. How do we become the best zookeepers, not just for ourselves, but also for all the people we love around us?
You have touched on so many really important and rather deep points, Amy. First of all, you talk about our environment. We're at a genetic mismatch for our current environment. We were aligned with our ancient, older environment, which really doesn't go back that many years now. Modernity is new. And the market for food, for frankenfoods, for industrialized foods, for toxic foods, these are all industries. And never before has our evolutionary biological bodies seen so much, not just abundance, but adulterated foods. So, what happens, and, kind of going back to what you're saying, as women, mothers, wives, those who generally become in charge of the health and the nourishment of the family, what happens is we are pitted against society itself. So our messages in our home are not echoed when our children go out into the world. When they go out into the world, they have such things called like soda dispensers. Who needs 32 ounces of anything, let alone toxicity? So, you go to parties and the gift bags are all these treats. And listen, I love a dessert as much as anybody else, but dessert should be for dessert, not for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So, as those who have, I think, the very, noble and necessary position of making these choices for our family, we can become very unpopular very fast, not just with our own children and husbands, given our home environment, depending on it, but also with the world at large. Like you can be, like I was talking about earlier, the weird one at the party, or you don't let your kids have that. And I kind of want to go, well, who let them sell this to our kids? Right. So
Totally.
we have to
Yes.
navigate this really adroitly of protecting our home and our children's bodies because who else will? Caveat emptor is a word that's learned in business. It's Latin for buyer beware, but we need to apply that to the entire food industry because it is not there to create healthy bodies. It's actually there to create little addicts out of our kids, a little sugar and refined carb, junk food addicts out of our kids, right? Why is there a health food section in the grocery store? That should tell you everything you need to know about the rest of the damn store. If there's one section for health food, what other purpose does food serve other than optimizing our health and giving ourselves what they need. So it's really hard for mamas. I have a lot of compassion. Well, I really hope that I'm helpful when I work with women and moms and when I come into their homes. And instead of, again, kind of making this is not a moral issue, there are a lot of moral issues in the world, and we have to help ourselves and our kids navigate those. But this is not one of them. So I like to caution moms against putting it in that framework to their kids, because then they'll feel like they failed or they were bad or they want something bad. And it's just using different language. Like, does this food make you weak or does it make you strong? Dave Asprey uses the word kryptonite foods. Does it make you weak like kryptonite? Or another way of looking at it, is this going to make a deposit in your body, or are you making withdrawal? And
I
sometimes you can
like
make a
that.
withdrawal. Sometimes it's fun to make a withdrawal. It's fun to buy something and make a withdrawal, but you can't make a withdrawal if you're not making deposits. So that's another framework for kids. And another thing is food and mood. So I like to tell the mamas, like, really start to coach your children to get curious and develop that respect for their innate intelligence, and to ask their bodies, like, how do you feel after eating like that Halloween candy? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel tired? Are you having a little bit of focus problems? Did you cry easily? Did your friend hurt your feelings and you got angry quicker? Like, start to notice that these things all become manifest in how we behave. And then it takes away this whole oppositional shame piece, you know? How do you usually handle that with your kids? You've had to contend with that over and
Oh,
over.
definitely. It's one of the things, it's just a continual conversation in our house. It's a continually me just sort of, I live my life I'm very, very clean about what I eat. And I love this. My husband actually said this to my son the other day. He said, honey, if you had a Ferrari, would you just go to Arco and put the 87 gasoline in it? And my kid was like, no, man, I would go get that like real high octane, like at least a 91, but more like a 99 octane. That's what I'd put in it, Dad. And he was like, well, that's your body, honey. And when
Amazing.
you put that good food in your body, you're putting that high octane fuel in your Ferrari. I mean, you cannot run your Ferrari on this low octane food. So
And
I
that's
thought that
just
was,
such a
I was like,
powerful metaphor, not just to kids, but all, young men and older men too. Like,
yeah, I was like,
using that
good job.
model. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's hard. You we're up against constant marketing to our children. If your
Yeah.
children are on TikTok or any sort of social media, it seems like there's just never ending marketing and it's all of the gross stuff. It's the canes. It's what do they always, oh my God, I have a kid that asks me for McDonald's constantly and I constantly say no. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, why would you want to eat that? I have a friend who's in the food industry, and back when the kids were younger, I hadn't evolved to that point with food yet. When maybe 12,
Yeah.
probably 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh, every once in a while, if they want to go get like a Happy Meal, we'll get a Happy Meal. And I have a friend in the
Yeah.
food industry, and she looked at me and she goes, you let your kids eat McDonald's? And I'm like, is that bad? She's like, it's so bad. And I'm like, oh,
And
okay.
sadly, it used to not be. Because McDonald's, when it first came around, where they were using lard, tallow, to cook their food in, they didn't even have all these chemical preservatives. They were using real food because that's what our environment had. That was the original vision. It was just faster and cheaper. Was it the best thing to put in your body 50 years ago? No.
No.
But it did not contain these fake foods. The experiment with McDonald's ice cream, if you leave it out, it won't melt. Somebody put a Big Mac in their pocket and forgot about it. And then, like, years later, went to their coat and found it fully preserved and intact.
So gross.
No,
It's not food. If no bugs want to eat it, if
that's
nobody
right.
wants to break it
If
down,
the
it's not
bugs are
food.
passing, what does Michael Pollan say? If it doesn't go bad, it was never good.
Oh, I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. So tell me, you do these pantry makeovers, which sounds like
Yeah.
something almost every household needs.
Yeah.
Where should people begin if they're feeling overwhelmed? What are some of the biggest offenders that you commonly remove from kitchens and pantries?
Yeah. Well, I think a good rubric for this is take a look at the ingredients list. How many, just a glance, how many ingredients are there? More than 5 or 6 or 7? Is it more like 20? That's one question. Are there ingredient items that you don't know how to pronounce or you've never heard of or that are not purchasable at your local store? It's another question to ask. third one is, can you make this at home if you had the time and inclination? Could you shop for the ingredients, come home and make it, whether it tastes good or looks good or whatever? Is it duplicatable? If it doesn't meet any of those criteria, then maybe it's not food. Food actually meets certain criterion. It has to create growth in the system. It has to confer nutrients. If it doesn't meet these criteria, this loose rubric, then maybe it's not food. Maybe you're being had, right? If you don't know who the sucker is, it's you.
That's
Right? Because and the other thing is, if it has a lot of glossy labels on it, a lot of marketing claims, if it's telling you why you should eat it, if there's commercialism tied to it, these are loose rules because there's, exceptions to some of these. Those are good ways to approach the clean out of your pantry. And where a lot of this stuff hides is obviously in the pantry, as mentioned, but also in the freezer.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of convenience foods in the freezer have a lot of unrecognizable ingredients because we tend to reach for those foods as also convenience foods. Those are the places, I like to start, because it's one thing to hire me to come over and kind of clean everything out, which I'm happy to do. And it's kind of fun. Everyone has fun. Everyone kind of gasps and laughs. But what I really want to do is teach them how to fish. I want them to teach them how to shop.
Yes.
And to really become savvy, because we vote with our dollars. We get to vote every day for how we spend our money. Are we going to vote for and endorse a sick food system that is seeking to turn you and your family into addicts? And I don't use that word lightly. That's a very serious word, an indictment. But they have self-disclosed this because they hire chemists to create foods that blow past our bliss point and chemically create addiction in the brain. Even soda, for instance, soda is so salty, it's so high in sodium and sugar, either artificial or corn syrup, both horrendous. So what it does is, as you drink it, you become thirstier. And the combination of sweet and salt is addictive. So the solution to the problem is drinking more, and then you're thirstier, and then your brain's hooked. So there's no relief, right? There's no there. These are not by accident. This didn't happen by accident. These companies do not have you or your family's health as a priority. It's commerce. And I believe in a free market. It's the best option we've been able to find, I think, so far. It's the only option that's really lifted people out of poverty. But caveat emptor, we have to be very discriminating and protective about what goes into our bodies.
Yeah, I've always been very careful. I'm very lucky. My mom, if we went grocery shopping with my mom, oh, can we get it, Mom? Can we please? 6-year-old me, I want the tricks. And she's like, all right, honey, go ahead and read the ingredients on the label. And if you can read all of the ingredients, we can get it.
I love her. I
just couldn't read the ingredients on the label.
That's so great. I love that one. That's so good for young kids. Yeah. Right.
Sure, we can get it if you can read the label.
She's brilliant. Yeah. Hashtag tricks aren't for kids.
No, tricks are not for kids. Yeah, it really is. It's a part of the thing, I love on the Manage Her, we're always talking about all the different things that women manage, all this invisible labor. And part of this really is the food that's in our house. It's the shopping that's done. It's what we decide. We get to decide what comes into our homes. My kids are always laughing at me because we always have off-brand everything. I don't have, if there's a commercial on TV for
the
it,
organic
we don't
version.
have it.
Yeah.
It's not in the pantry, but it is. It's the organic version of everything. In fact, my grandson was over and he's 7 and he lives in Texas with his mom who's 27. And my 5-year-old was taking him around our house and going, everything in our house is organic. And so he started pointing at things. Is that organic? And she's like, yep. And he's like, is that organic? Yep. And then he's like, is that organic? And she's like, Mom, is that organic? I'm like, yes.
How about if we just change the labeling? We don't label anything organic. Just everything that's not organic says polluted or laden with glyphosate,
poisoned,
or endocrine disruptors, or obesogenics. How about we flip it?
Yes.
And then the people saying I want organic like we have been made to sound like neurotic or, having really high needs. And really what we're asking for is the food in the original packaging, presentation, and ingredients that I believe in a creator, that our creator created for us, or using model of intelligent design or nature, that was adulterated by people. I want the non-people tampered version of the food. Thank you. That doesn't make me neurotic. And it's not my fault that it's more expensive. You made the food cheaper by adding chemicals. Now we pay an inflated cost to get it in its natural form. Like the whole thing has been so twisted.
It really is. Well, my mother always says we're the only animals on the planet that sprays our food with poison before we eat it.
Right. Your mother was so wise. Sounds very similar to some of I didn't get those aphorisms. Those are great, but really similar to how I was raised as well. Like it's like flipping the lens, like looking things differently. Like, wait a second, we are reacting to something that was put into place for profit maximization. So our response,
shelf life. It needs
right.
We've got to have shelf life. We've got to have durability. And then
so if we're upset, we're not high maintenance or neurotic. We're upset because, well, let me put it this way. It's no sign of health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society. I wish I could remember who that was.
Absolutely.
A very wise older Indian man said that. So when you kind of look that way, if the society has been constructed in a way where it's not protecting our health, in fact, it's making us sick, it's not a sign of our mental or physical health to adapt to it. So we have to be careful who we're problematizing here, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I also love your perspective that wellness is about partnering with the body instead of punishing it. Could you expand on that a little?
Mentioning that. And I know you and I are really aligned on that. This principle really gives me chills because, well, I'll just start with the population of people I work with that have complex chronic illness. That's a good place to start because never is sort of more apparent there. Some certain populations of people will carry this belief that their body is broken or that their body has let them down. They problematize their own body. They have triangulated against it. And if I can offer the perspective that your body has been there for you all along, and then if you support your body will in turn support you. When we are in an oppositional relationship with our body, optimized health cannot emerge from that type of engagement. This is an enemy way of thinking. We have to align with our body because guess what? We are our body. How can we be made to be antagonistic to that which houses us, that which has been given to us, which gets us through life? The pharmaceutical model tries to kind of offer us for sale this idea that if we tame it, beat it into submission, diet culture does this too. They're always like beating our body, like hack this, fight that. It just becomes whack-a-mole. But I mentioned before, I do believe in a creator. And I think that this soul, if I may say, was very intentionally designed to be housed in a body. Our body is like a soul suit. All Western, Eastern, all old societies, wisdom traditions always use the body as the portal to entry to the soul or the mind or the spirit or spirituality. Always, like yoga, meditation, all of these disciplines are to honor, calm the body, nurture the body so that we can access all the deeper work. So when we bring the two together, that's when real optimized healing can become available to us.
I love that. Do you think women have been conditioned to distrust their own bodies?
Yes, I think so. I think that we have what is sort of like pathological or illness. Illness has become normalized, right? So when we have a symptom, we're told, oh, you're just 40. Oh, you're just young. Oh, you're just a mom. Oh, you're just in menopause. That all gets normalized, right? And then health itself becomes pathologized. Whereas like actually being a normal weight, a normal metabolism, having healthy labs, not being on medications, That is weird and unattainable. You mentioned oral contraception before, and I think it was really powerful for the women's movement because it allowed us to go into the workplace and we were able to kind of liberate ourselves from the fear of, getting pregnant when it wasn't a choice. But everything is double barreled. There's a price paid for everything. And what oral contraception does is it shuts off the features that make us women. So it turns off these biological processes where that kind of movement in our body, these cycles in our body, help connect us to ourselves and to our environment. There's intuition that's available there. And when that gets shut off, we lose something approximating, real self-mastery and attunement. So I think there's been a number of medications that have done this. And I think that, and I keep saying this, but the medicine model that's a disease model disconnects us from what is actually available to us when we really get curious and go into true self-care.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I read a study a while back about women who are of the age to choose a mate, to get married. Women who are on birth control often choose the wrong guy. And
This is called the
may
T-shirt study. This is a big
Yes.
study. It's called the T-shirt study. Do you know about it?
No, tell us more about it. I always
Well,
thought
I
it was
don't know
so
if I'm going to have the
fascinating.
right scientific language, but I can just kind of give you the contour of the study.
Yeah.
Okay. So something kind of called pheromones, which is we can smell on somebody features that are attractive. And evolutionary biologists would say that's because we are trying to match and mate with someone that does not have our weaknesses, has instead of having our weaknesses, has our strengths, so that we're advancing the species, right? Like our bodies are amazing. We can freaking smell genes and what would be an evolutionary biological fit. What? So that we know. That's not even a theory. Like that we know. And so what they did is they took women who were not on oral contraception and they smelled the t-shirts, not disgusting t-shirts, but t-shirts that a man had worn for like maybe 12 hours or something, that had their own smell imbued. And they smelled them and then they took their genetic testing and they were spot on who they were mate selecting based on pheromones. Then they put the women on oral contraception, or used the women that were on oral contraception, had them do the same test, and they didn't choose the ones that would be considered by evolutionary biologists to be their appropriate mate. So it
Isn't that
actually changed the
fascinating?
way we interact with our mating environment.
Absolutely. Well, I
Talk
am
about
I am
connection.
that study. My first husband, when we got married, I was on oral contraceptives. We had a hard time conceiving, all this
Oh,
stuff. We ended
wow.
up getting divorced. Second husband, I was not on oral contraceptives.
Yeah.
We are so fertile together. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it is unbelievable. It's
I
great.
mean, it's been wild. So, we've
Yes.
had 4 kids together. We had 2 way into our 40s. Yeah, that study has always just fascinated me. So it's, we're not just
It's
distrusting our bodies. We're also seemed like
fascinating.
we're disconnected
If
from our
that were in a
bodies.
novel, you wouldn't believe it. That would
Right?
just bend incredulity, right? It's like, that can't be. I mean, that's how incredible our bodies are and how ancient they are. Like our bodies do things we don't even know or understand. So when we start tinkering with its functions and expressions, we're tinkering with like evolution itself.
Oh,
Yeah, we
totally.
know not what we do, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Is health more about discipline or awareness?
I gonna answer that they go hand in hand because willpower is a fatigable muscle. And if we're relying just upon discipline, it's going to fail us because we're going to have weak moments. And we can exhaust ourselves with discipline. So what happens is if we have the discipline, we have the awareness, which incentivizes the discipline. The discipline, when used long enough, will change our brain and change our habits, like that neuroplasticity. And then it becomes natural and normal to reach for the foods and the things that actually serve us because the discipline got us there, but it will not keep us there.
I love that. Great answer. What's one wellness trend you think people are misunderstanding right now?
Well, I think something we're not understanding is we really haven't understood the importance of body composition. We use this BMI to try to determine weight health, and it's so misleading. Body composition tells us whether we have inflammatory fat, whether we have inert fat, how much muscle we have. All of these are really important. These are not just interesting data points. This is not a meathead conversation. This is foundational metabolic health. So if we're using the wrong metrics, we're going to get the wrong answers. If we switch the lens a little bit and start to see how our body's actually changing over time, then we're going to have a different goal.
Yeah, I love that. Great, great. If you could change one thing about the way children are introduced to food and nutrition, what would it be?
I would teach them to make friends with their bodies. I would teach them to really develop that inner listening and remove the shame piece. If you want the thing, eat the thing, but then really pay attention to how you feel afterwards. And then compare that with when you're given what your mom or dad might say is a good meal for you. How do you feel after that? I would invite them to develop self-curiosity so that can stay with them over a lifetime. This touches on what you said before, whereas discipline will run out if it doesn't become part of our system and the way we respond and react to our environment. So I really invite them to make friends with their bodies, that their bodies are there for them. They take really good care of their body will take care of them. And you can't move
Yeah.
out. It's where you live.
You do live there. My mom was always really good about teaching me, even as a little girl. She'd always say, listen to your body, Aimee. Small children know what they need. So
Yeah.
listen to your body. If your
Yeah.
body is craving something, it's because you need it. And I
Right.
thought that was a really interesting thing to teach a very small child, that kind of nurturing that intuition. Because I ate some weird stuff as a kid. I really
She's
did. I
teaching
loved.
the opposite of that disconnection. She's teaching us to cultivate self-trust. That, what does Rumi say? There's a voice that doesn't use words. Listen to that voice. Yeah, where
Yes.
our bodies, our lives are always speaking to us. There's always information coming in.
All the
That's
time. Yeah, if
yeah,
you have to listen to your body is
yeah,
just signaling you all the time. It really knows
yeah,
what it needs
yeah,
and what it wants, and it's funny, but we're these frequency animals, but I'm realizing now it's like we've got frequency, we've got
yeah.
amino acids, we've got vitamins, we've got minerals. So there's a complexity of what nutrition and what our bodies actually need, and it seems like we're really getting into deeply understanding the science of
Mhm.
these metabolic pathways, how these things are really
Mm,
interacting with
mm.
our bodies. And I feel like we're about to get to a place in medicine where there's just going to be a profound ability to maximize our healing via nutrition and amino acids and peptides. If we just pull
Mhm.
all of these things together, we're like right on the verge of it, I feel like.
Yes, and it's like what's old is new again. I mean, it's kind of going back to like really foundational principles that were so normal and natural to our ancestors, perhaps, that
Mhm.
they didn't even know that that was a philosophy because it was just life, right? So we kind of have to remember and we have to move forward and we have to move backward in order to go forward. Like there's really foundational elements that our body needs, not just needs, actually expects. Body expects certain nutrients and certain conditions to thrive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's certain things your body absolutely cannot go without. There's so many things it needs.
yeah.
We look at epigenetics is really teaching us about the importance of sleep and stress reduction. There's all of these other elements to it too, but I could just talk to you for hours, Rebecca.
As
You're
could I, as
amazing.
could I. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you. This
Thank you
conversation
for
felt so
having me.
grounding and honestly like so needed. What I appreciate most about your work is that you bring people back to something simple but incredibly powerful. The idea that our bodies are not our enemies to fight against, they're systems asking for nourishment, rhythm,
Yes,
support, awareness, and partnership. And I think so many women listening needed to hear that because women today are carrying so much
they are.
caregiving, invisible labor, stress, decision
Yeah.
fatigue, family health, and often years of confusion around food, dieting, and wellness messaging. What I loved about today's conversation is that you made health feel less overwhelming and more human. You
Mhm.
reminded us that wellness doesn't have to start with perfection. sometimes it starts with listening, with awareness, with reconnecting. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom and your heart with our audience. To everyone listening, you can learn more about Rebecca Maas and her work at Maas Method. You can also follow her on Instagram at Maas Method. It's MAAS Method. And keep an eye out for her upcoming book, The Holistic Guide to Thriving on GLP-1s. We'll put it up on our website as soon as it comes out.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Aimee.
welcome.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for bringing me into your wisdom community that you have created. You have your own wisdom community here.
Oh, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And we'll
Thank you.
also be sharing a full script link where listeners can access trusted supplements and wellness recommendations at a discount. We'll get that up on our website too. I'm looking forward to that. And as always, please subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and share this episode with another woman who may need this conversation. And comment. If you guys have any questions, Rebecca and I will be interacting. So if you have questions, comment your questions and we will do our very best to get back to you and answer your questions. Thank you for joining us for Manage Your Health Month on the Manager podcast. And remember, your body's not broken. It may simply be asking you to come back into relationship with it. We'll see you next time on the Manager podcast.